It's an understatement to say this is an unprecedented time for public sector agencies and their missions. Government agencies have had to react at speed to respond to challenges that have ranged from pivoting to telework, immediate mission impacts to support health and safety of public, to increasing regulatory burdens as stewards of public resources. Adoption of current and new financial management regulations, oversight reporting also continues to be a operational challenge for CFOs. In addition to the change impacts from current situations, many legacy financial systems are already at the end of their usable life and have forced agencies to develop and execute modernization plans to transition to future ready technology platforms sooner rather than later. Technology enablers and automations have now proved to be must haves rather than nice to haves. It's also important to keep in mind that the real challenge is to transform and innovate without impacting operational continuity and in alignment with all compliance regulations that are applicable to public sector agencies. What we've seen is that agencies have prioritized investments in modernizations of legacy systems, adoptions of cloud smart solutions, and applying intelligent automation to eliminate manual processes and look for solutions, analytical solutions, to brace for long term impacts on how work will be performed. CFOs, especially, have been looking to automate repetitive, high volume, and manual workloads to streamline efficiencies and reduce cost. They are looking to tackle workflow automations to also augment functionality gaps within enterprise solutions and financial systems. They've been evaluating platforms with broad capabilities and looking to automate processes from a robotic process automation standpoint. Data management, reporting, and data visualizations also continue to be in demand for real time financial reporting and decision support. Organizations are starting to explore and demand solutions that go way beyond tactical reporting and dashboarding. There is a need for solutions that have true analytical modeling and cognitive capabilities. They are being open minded in their approach to evaluate and adopt emerging technologies such as blockchain, machine learning, advanced analytics, and artificial intelligence. With regards to financial management, the key requirements remain that there needs to be an ability to provide resource allocations and justifications by seamlessly merging data across different systems to focus on key strategic drivers. There is a need to use fact based financial intelligence to improve understanding on how current decisions will affect long term goals. And of course, this is only possible if there is a single unified view of data to identify risks such as funding shortfalls and make data driven decisions for the highest mission impact and the best return on investment. The right data needs to be available at the right time to the right stakeholders.
Hi, I'm Amy Kluber, and today I'm joined by a couple individuals talking about financial reporting. And government-wide, agencies are grappling with how to make it better. And of course, technology has a lot of promise for that. At HHS, the financial office is looking at RPA, which can improve transparency and privacy around grants management, for example. So we're joined by HHS Chief Financial Officer Mike Peckham and OneStream Software Vice President Michael Germain, who will give us an overview of what's going on at the agency and in the industry in financial management modernization and some of the best practices as the agency navigates that. So let's start off with Mike Peckham. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. What are some challenges you're facing right now in the financial shop, and how are you thinking about technology for improving that?
Well, thanks, Amy, and it is a pleasure to join you today. One little clarification point, I am the CFO at the Program Support Center, not for the HHS proper, but we do support 7 different organizations across HHS, so it is a really big scope of activity. And I would say the one thing that we're really faced with, the biggest challenge on everybody's mind right now is return to work. I think that we have utilized technology extremely well over the last year and a half, coming into 2 years, especially given real no notice. Doing these types of conversations virtually was not something we practiced on a regular day back in early 2020, but I think everybody has become extremely used to them. That is a huge attribution to what technology can do for us. So I think that there's a great gain there. When you start to think about how can technology continue to improve, well, there are so many opportunities. One of the things that I've been toying around with, specifically speaking about financial reporting, is how can we get to some more standards and make things a little bit more electronic? Right now, we kind of cobble information together. And I've been really interested in what the SEC has done with XBRL reporting, because when I look at the federal government and I look at Standard General Ledger, I think we already have the infrastructure to attack the problem from exactly that perspective. I'd like to see more folks across the federal government start to garner a little support for really going full tilt on electronic reporting through a tool like XBRL or something else.
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a collaborative nature too. So Michael, I wanted to toss it to you. What are some of the processes that can be automated in financial management? What are some of the things to be thinking about as far as improving those functions?
Yeah, great question, Amy. And the big push that we're seeing right now is automating a few different places, right? Whether it's the end-to-end planning, programming, budget execution process, right? And along with that is really getting better transparency and confidence around their people, their people planning or their capital planning or their project planning, right? With people being the biggest expense to agencies, just trying to get some transparency into that and more accountability. And then also, around the close, right? As Mike was saying about financial reporting, there's a lot that happens in the background to get to those final numbers, and really automating, whether it's there's a lot of consolidation that's happening, especially at the cabinet levels that have multiple components underneath them. And then there's interagency eliminations, reconciliations, et cetera, to get to that, the AFR, the agency financial report. So there's a lot where we're helping a lot of the agencies. And, today, when we meet with a lot of the agencies, the first thing we do in our presentation is we show a spaghetti chart, and it's what we call corporate performance management 1.0. And it's not even just the federal government, it's the commercial companies too that we're helping enable to be more efficient. Is that typically what happens is you have multiple applications and multiple products to handle a single process, because again, there's multiple components involved and they all need their different levels of detail, to do their formulation or to do their actuals. And bringing that into a true platform and alleviating those multiple applications and products, because at the end of the day, it's very labor intensive, very costly to try to integrate those all together so we can get to, we're going to talk about that today, is to get the executives confident to make real-time data-driven decisions. And a few of the customers that we've been working with, DHS, they were really looking to automate and become more efficient in their budget formulation to produce that congressional justification book. There was a lot of Word, Excel, et cetera, and they've done an amazing job in automating that entire end-to-end process.
Fantastic. This is something I hear, or I've been hearing across the government, as far as the promise of automation and technologies, starting with RPA, and then of course the bigger ones like AI. But all of that really necessitates accurate data and quality data, and that's something that all of government is grappling with. So what are some of the key principles around making these sort of data-driven decisions in order to make RPA effective? Mike, do you want to take that?
I would be happy to. I think you got to start with, do folks trust the data? Mm-hmm. Throughout my career, I've often heard, hey, we took that data and we massaged it. And as soon as I hear that, I go, oh, hold on, what'd you do? It's a key question everybody has on their mind. Anytime you massage data, are you actually dealing with the data that you originally worked with, or is it some version of it that you aren't necessarily supportive of, I guess is the best way that I can put it. So everything that I've been doing over the last 5 years has really been focused on the reference model. Let's swim as far upstream as we can. Let's get to the gold source of information. Whatever that system is that where you're originating your data, let's grab the data from that system. So if it's updated in that system, we're seeing it true to value what it was system one-to-one. There's no ETL, it's an API. You're going to pull the data directly over and give the users the ability to go in and test exactly what the data is that's being presented to them. When you present data to a user from the perspective of, I'll say the red light, yellow light, green light, there's a tendency for the users to say, well, I made my decision because the system told me it was okay. And I think that's one of the things I'm trying to get folks away from is let's present the data so the human can make the decision, but the human can explain why they made the decision. It's a catch-22 otherwise. And so allowing folks to kind of drill into whatever it is you're presenting, let them know where that data came from, how fresh the data is, and again, allow them to go back into the source system to look at the data in context so they can challenge or trust. I think that's key to any data-driven decisions moving forward.
Anything to add to that, Michael?
Yeah, Mike, you hit it right on the head, right? I mean, really, I always say is we need to have clean data, right? We need to have clean data because confidence is key. I think too is that we really got to create a culture that encourages critical thinking and curiosity. We need to change a bit, right? We need to embrace the technology and not be afraid of it. And, a lot of people think that when we start talking about RPA and, machine learning and, a lot of the buzzwords out there today that it's going to replace humans. And that's not the case. We're always going to need humans to understand the data. But I think we need to do a good job. And it's starting, a lot of people are starting to talk about it. And I think we're at the beginning stages of, the RPAs, really taking a hold of the government because it's really starting to happen in the commercial world. And usually once it goes through the commercial world, it'll come down to the federal government too. So it's exciting to be a part of the conversations.
In addition to, the fact that RPA is not replacing the human, obviously we know the human is very much necessary for, double crossing the bot or not letting it just run amok. But also to that, there are some technologies that can be used alongside automation. So how can other processes and technologies be woven in here, and how does it fit into the conversation? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I could start off, Mike, if you want.
Michael?
Please.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, so, for us, so what we offer, we set aside, all of that automation, right? And we create automation. So from like a software perspective, there's going to be technologies that only will enhance, right? And they'll encourage better automation. We do that day to day for all of our customers out there. Michael, I don't know if you want to take it from more of a consumer.
Sure, I'd love to jump in there. So I think I shared before, you may have heard, we did an RPA project here. I wanted to prove that it could really be beneficial within our organization. So we did the travel post payment audits. It's a longstanding practice, and it was taking us approximately 54 minutes to do each one on average. So we threw RPA on top of it. We ran through a relatively quick process. I want to say within 3 months, we had RPA up and running in a test scenario, kind of a minimally viable product. And the first time we ran through the process, we were able to do it in 14 minutes. And everybody was like, wow, that's incredible. We tweaked it a little bit and we got down to 9 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then we ran it again. And here was the funny thing. We went right back up to about 14 minutes. RPA is one of those tools that you got to babysit. And I've said this over and over again. You got to watch it very closely because it's mimicking exactly what a human does. And I like to say it makes mistakes like humans do, not from the perspective of it's going to mess up with the data. It's going to mess up something in the process. In our case, it was an OCR that just wasn't capturing data. That's it, an optical character recognition process that wasn't working. As soon as we figured that out, ran through it the next time, we were under 9 minutes. So this is great. I mean, the improvement, the efficiency there is 82%. And everybody would say that's wonderful, stop there. I like to say, if we're doing intelligent automation and we're really augmenting the work of the human, let's layer on a little AI. Let's start to have AI understand when you have an outcome and a human makes a decision based on the data that's been presented. AI can learn from that if you repeat the process over and over and over again. And then instead of being presented with work where you simply are pulling that data and trying to make a decision for yourself, the AI can present a recommendation. It can say, 96% of the time when these scenarios have been hit, here's the decision that's been made in the past. Yep. Now, I get it. Someone might be saying, well, now you're literally relying on the computer. But it's simply telling you a factual situation where this is what's been going on, but the human still needs to make the decision. The human still needs to look through everything that's being presented. And they might say, well, you know what? 96% of the time you might be right. But there's one little thing that I see in here that I want to look into a little bit further, and it might change my mind as to what the outcome is going to be altogether. The beautiful thing is the AI will learn from that as time goes on. So let's start to augment what we're doing with RPA and other technologies so that we're really getting to the intelligent automation. And I think we're going to be under 5 minutes per post-payment audit once we get to that point.
Wow, lots of promise there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So blockchain, that's another technology that can kind of has a seat at the table here. And Mike, your organization has been working on blockchain. A number of other government agencies has been piloting them. So tell us about the pilot that you're working on, where you are with that, and what are some of the challenges around that as you've kind of been kicking it off?
Sure. We kind of backed into blockchain. Let me put it that way. I was running a project called Reinvent Grants Management for the department. And we're trying to figure out how do we build efficiencies within grants management. And so we looked at the risk assessment process. It takes about 4 to 8 hours, and it was a huge pain point. We went through human-centered design with all the stakeholders involved in the process, and we said, look, this is something that if we can tackle it right up front, we're going to be saving a lot of time for the federal government. Also for the recipients of awards, but we can get into that later. So what we did was we found there were 7 different systems that we were getting information from. And so we came up with a different process to get information from each one of those systems, because anyone that had an API, bam, we go and we grab the information and we're done. That's really, really simple. We do go back and we do kind of do hashed folders to make sure that we've gotten all the information that we were intending to get. You've always, again, like the RPA, you got to babysit, you got to kind of, look over the shoulder of what the bot or the tool is doing for you. So we pull all this information together. We basically took a 4 to 8 hour process down to 15 minutes. So talk about time savings, it's just astronomical. Where we fell into the blockchain aspect was, if after the fact, audits are going to happen. We are the kings of compliance in the federal government. So we are going to have an audit. Well, currently what you're looking at is a paper file where papers come and go. You can't always control access, and we've been dealing with that since my entire career. What we did realize was, if at the point in time where somebody runs a risk assessment in this tool, because we've got a permissioned blockchain, we know who the user is, it can take that information and it can store the exact replication of what they looked at on the blockchain. So when an auditor goes back, and so we're sitting here in November of 2021, if we did a risk assessment back in April, that file may or may not have everything in it in November that it had in April. It may have changed. The immutable nature of the blockchain will show you that the April risk assessment that was performed is exactly as it was. Nothing has changed. And if anything has happened over time, you will see incremental updates to the node. So it's a beautiful way of going behind the scenes and being able to prove this is exactly what was going on at the point in time where I looked at this particular applicant. And here's the reason why I awarded to them. Now, things could go south, and we'll be able to see that over time. Every 6 months, if you go in and you run a risk assessment, you're going to start to see financial shrinking, perhaps. You might see going concerns popping up left and right. These are key items within the grants world that you want to look for before you do an award to a particular recipient. So the value there is great. And if you think about the idea that we have lots of folks in the federal government right now who are starting to do payment blockchains. Everybody loves the cryptocurrency idea around blockchain. It's not going to be quite the same. I can tell you that right up front. But the information that we'll be able to pull from those blockchains and add on to our blockchain will just enhance the process incredibly. So we got an ATO, an authority to operate. The blockchain has been handed over to our Office of Grants, and so we're just waiting for them to open it up and let people start using it fully.
Wow, exciting. Michael, anything on your end as far as how blockchain can help the financial management processes?
No, I mean, to just kind of piggyback a little bit, I mean, having data available to multiple people, right? I mean, that's kind of the key in that it's real time, right? And it just enabling, better decision making. And, Mike did an amazing job talking about it. It's glad to see it being done at an agency, because, it's just a start there. And then as people catch on to it, it'll help the entire federal government become more efficient. So love to see that stuff.
So as this, I guess, proof of concept for blockchain navigates, the use cases and the people, now that it's in the hands of the users, are there any cross-government efforts that you're looking at to kind of advance that or blow it up?
Well, absolutely. So in my current role, I'm over the payment management system. So we have MITRE doing a demonstration on a blockchain. We have Treasury's FIT working on a payment blockchain. We have the National Science Foundation also working on a payment blockchain. I want to be able to work with the outcomes of any one of those three products or all three outcomes of those products. So I'm invested from that perspective, because to me, if I'm a payment shop, I need to be able to promote and facilitate the payments as cleanly as possible. And this will help me incredibly. The true benefit that I really see to this is once I start to link this information together, I've got a payment blockchain, and the question that constantly comes around grants management specifically is who are the subrecipients on a grant? Yeah. And we have what's called the federal subreporting system, where the folks who do get a grant are to register their information, unless the information about that subrecipient is publicly available somewhere else, which means it may or may not be in FSRS. Well, if I have a risk assessment tool and I roll that risk assessment tool out to my recipients so that they can do the same risk assessment, because they're required to do a risk assessment on their subs, they run a risk assessment on the sub. That's the first indicator I have of who that subrecipient is. And then as soon as a payment starts running through the system and I can marry up that I have this award number paying to this subrecipient, I have created a transparency we've never had before in the entire payment process. And it's information that is supposed to be there already. We've just been struggling with it for at least the last 30, 40 years, trying to get that publicly available.
For any new technology, that risk assessment component is important. So how are you thinking about risk management when it's not just blockchain, but any financial modernization, all of that? How are you strategizing around that?
Well, Michael, I don't want to steal any thunder here, but I mean, risk is a double-edged sword. Yeah. You've got risk tolerance and actual realized risk. And so I always take risk into account in everything that I'm doing. One of the interesting things that I found, working around the grants area, is we had a risk questionnaire. And so a risk questionnaire is supposed to be, what is the potential for risk within this particular award? And we went through and we took the information out of the back end, the information from the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and we married that up to the risk assessment questionnaires up front, and we found zero correlation between them, none. We aren't predicting any potential risk by filling out this questionnaire. So I have to ask the question, what is the value of the risk questionnaire? Is it simply a compliance factor that we have to ask? Or should we move away from that model and start moving towards the model of what are the indicators for realized risk, and how can we look at those up front and apply those to a particular applicant to see if there are any criteria that might be met at the point of award that we could mitigate at that point. Because that's the key here. It's not the fact that we don't want to take on risk in the process. It's we want to know what the risk is as we go in and have something to mitigate that risk so that hopefully we can move forward with a very successful award, whether it be a grant or a contract.
All right. Anything to add, Michael?
Yeah, and Amy, I was going to say, and when we look at, risk management, right, we think of things like, adoption, right? When we bring in new solutions, whatever, what kind of technology is, right? There's always that fear of it's going to be a change, and, making things easier for the end user to get into systems and to get their tasks done, right? And then, having the auditability there, right? If someone makes a change, we know who changed it, and you can't turn that stuff off, and having that security and, putting, what we're seeing now is the government adopting to SaaS solutions, right? So making sure that our solutions are FedRAMP certified. So, that we don't have to worry about, is it in a safe environment, right? So, and then bringing everything together, right? Was I talked about earlier is, getting away from having, multiple products and applications to do these types of processes where you could have it all live together, right? And it eliminates all of that risk of integration and coming up with bad numbers, and, and enabling, executives like Mike, that when they need to be able to understand, courses of actions when we're talking about grants, to give them that knowledge where they're, where they can mitigate that risk right off the bat.
Yeah,
So
I wanted to add real quick to that, Amy, if you don't mind. Michael, I think you kind of summarized a general thought that I have. The federal government is very risk averse.
Yep.
And we always have been, and it's very hard to change that nature because failure isn't generally accepted.
Yep.
However, first thing is you're going to fail. I mean, that's just inevitable. Every project, I mean, how many projects fail? I think the percentage is well above 70%. It's pretty bad. As long as you learn something from the failure and you apply it to the next project or the next actionable item that you're working on, whether that be a project or whether that be an award. If you've learned something and you apply it, it's really not a failure. And I think that's what we have to incrementally learn from our mistakes, and we will build a stronger risk framework from that.
It's a good way to put it. So as agencies, and in your case, Mike, at HHS, could blockchain, as they're thinking about, blockchain automation or whatever that modernization effort looks like, and especially in this context of financial management, how are you thinking about redundant technologies? Decommissioning legacy systems or integrating them, if that's what it calls for. How are you thinking about that?
Well, I already alluded to the idea that, we could get the federal subrecipient reporting system to just go away, utilizing the new blockchain technology. Within my organization specifically, right now, I'm looking at our debt management process. And we have a hodgepodge of different systems working around what is our debt management collection system. The system is relatively old. It was built way, way back in the 90s. It's good. I mean, it's a workhorse, but it certainly doesn't do everything that we need it to do as far as storing information in the system. We have a lot of CUF systems to store the information. And recently there was a lot of debt forgiveness and other activities based on COVID, debt relief, things like that. The coding to change that system was incredibly hard to manage because the system is aged. So we are right now looking at, replacing a system like that. But as we replace it, we're looking at it from the perspective, contrary to what we've done in the federal government in the past, is let's not just build this for what we do. Let's talk to the debtors and let's include them, because let's face it, we need information from them. They are inherently part of the process, and we need to give them access to this information to kind of resolve a lot of the, I will say, ill will that's gone on in the past around debts. I know that I've been getting calls lately on my phone where somebody put my phone number here at work down on their debt letter. And so I once a week get a phone call from a debt collector, and I've told them over and over again, I'm like, it's not me. I mean, I am not the person you're trying to call. Having the ability to provide that information back. I mean, I'm tangentially related to it, but there's no way for me to electronically go in there and put something in the system right now that says, I'm not the debtor you're looking for, and this is who I am. This is what I want to provide the ability to. I am tangentially touching this. The debtor should be able to go in there and get access to the information. They should be able to see what they've submitted. They should be able to challenge misinformation that could be, contained within the system. So all that leads to, we have so much promise for what the technologies today will allow for us, especially if we take a microservices approach and we build our approach from different debts have different rules around them. So each microservice will be foundationally the same, but there will be little nuanced differences to each one of them, depending on what the interest rate is, what the admin fees are, what the timelines are for repayment. All that kind of stuff makes a slight little change, but we can do it with the technologies of today. And I want to say, even 15 years ago, it was really a struggle to do these things.
From a vendor perspective, is there anything, Michael, that you are thinking about when it comes to agencies who are working to, get rid of redundant technologies or manage them somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, with automation and blockchain and modernization efforts, like there's certain technologies that will always exist, right? Like, we talk about ERP systems, whether it's, the SAPs of the world, the Oracle, really that transactional system, right? That runs the business day to day. That's always going to be there, right? We're doing our AR, our AP, et cetera. And then, kind of where we sit and some other vendors sit is we call it the analytical layer, really, the being able to do the what if analysis, really that, making, the decisions on the business, right? And with automation and, blockchain and AI and machine learning, it only enables, better unbiased, modeling and collaboration and enhanced decision-making, right? So I do see some of the, legacy technology being retired, and, the government is doing a good job of, realizing that commercial technology is configurable to their agencies, right? For a long time, it was, we're so different, we're going to custom build something. And then when they custom build it, it becomes a monster, right? And it's, no one knows how to maintain it. It's expensive. Where now they're really embracing commercial technology to configure, right, to their needs. They're not custom coding anything where it breaks down and it takes, years to do an upgrade. But I love seeing that. So
awesome. Definitely a new era, I guess, if you want to call it that in a couple different contexts. So, final question, looking ahead to 2022, is there anything that you guys are really excited about in particular? We can start with Mike.
What am I excited about? Well, kind of talking to what Michael was just saying, I'm very excited because right now we have options. Yeah. And from that statement, I'm saying we have custom code, we have low code, and both of them will have a home, and they will, you always have to figure that out. What I don't want folks to think is that there's a silver bullet to any one problem. Yeah. Look at the problem and then look at the technology that's the best technology suited to resolve that problem. It may be, if you're doing something like a workflow, I mean, oh my God, run out and buy your low code stuff, or if you have your low code stuff in-house, just start working on it right away. Literally, that's how I was able to do the stuff I did with RPA. But there are going to be some situations where you're going to be looking at some complexities that are going to be a little bit beyond what you might be able to do through a low code system. So just take into consideration that there's all sorts of other solutions that are available, and make sure you choose the right one. And again, don't be afraid of failure. You might step out, the first time, you might not get it right, but that doesn't mean if you're doing an agile process, course correct quickly and no one will even notice.
Michael, how about you?
Yeah, no, there's a couple of things I'm excited about. What I love is I love going into a meeting and you see a change agent that just wants to do good for the government, and they're excited to bring in new technologies. And the other cool thing is we're starting to see a lot of the younger generation come into the government, which is exciting, right? Because they see things very differently and they bring a lot of new, fresh ideas. So that's refreshing to see. just to piggyback on what a point that Mike just brought up is, choose the right solution. I always say, do your due diligence, right? Give vendors a chance to come in, and do your due diligence. Speak to other agencies that are using that solution, and really, it's a good opportunity to find out, were there challenges during the process? What did they learn? Et cetera. I can, like, speaking to other, customers that are using that same software is just, or even in that same situation is priceless. So.
Awesome.
That's great advice, Michael.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you both, Mike and Michael, for joining me and talking about the cool things that are going on with blockchain and automation. And I know it's an exciting time to be in technology. I feel like I say that all the time, but it really is. There's so much promise, and there's so many cool things that I'm still going to keep my eyes on, Mike. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, Amy, thank you very much for the opportunity.
For a successful modernization program, it is critical to set the foundation right and to have an agile mindset. Having the right technology enablers can very well be the trigger to change the DNA of an organization to adopt data-driven decision making and to be on a path of continuous innovation. While on a path of continuous innovation, there needs to be an equal focus on operational optimizations, because operational optimizations can be key to bridge gaps when organizations are preparing to undertake large-scale modernizations. Manual processes have proved time and again to be expensive in terms of time and risk of human error. Recent capacity reductions have amplified both process and data integrity issues for many CFO organizations. We often recommend that CFOs should take into consideration mission risk and impact when prioritizing technology investments. Start identifying the functional needs early, evaluate key risks and operational requirements to take a methodical approach to select the right solutions that fit best, and then establish a roadmap, establish a realistic roadmap. It is also important to align key stakeholders to get buy-in, to communicate roles, responsibilities, and outcomes. Because proactive change management and training are key to building technology fluency across the organization for seamless adoption. At the end of the day, successful operational integration of technical solutions is going to be a key critical success factor. We hope that technology transformation and adoption will continue to remain a key priority for public sector in the near term and the long term to achieve the best mission outcomes and the best return on investment for public resources.